Lori here. I'm here to do another Top 10 Tuesday. And this topic from Artsy Reader Girl was actually super interesting, and I actually really had to think about it. And I'm actually thinking about it as I do this video, so I don't actually know how many I will come up with. I hope it's 10, but it might be a little bit less. And that is sense memories or senses that you connect with when you like see a book, like when you read it. The first series that comes to mind is definitely Harry Potter. And that's all the books. Like, I definitely read this in a very, very formative year. I read this from 5th grade to my freshman year in college. So there was, like, a lot of reading. And one of the number senses I recall with this book is just, I remember wherever I was. Like, I remember, like, the air. Like, I remember when I was reading book 7, this is a very, very specific story, but I read the last, I reread the last 100 pages of the book before I actually finished it, and I remember sitting out on my chair on my porch and just finishing Harry Potter, and I remember I closed the book, and I was just, like, in the sun, and that is one memory I will always have. I just remember sitting there with sun on my face thinking, oh my god, I just finished Harry Potter. But another very, very specific sense memory is in book 5, when Harry was cutting his hand open with Umbridge, and I remember just going like this. Whenever I read that scene, I always like clutch my hands because I'm like, oh my god, I will not tell lies on my hand. And another one that is very, very specific is when I was reading book 1. I remember I was so focused on what I was doing, I couldn't hear anything. Like, if anyone talked to me that moment, I did not hear it. And I remember someone was speaking to me, and I remember just not hearing what they were saying. So I remember all hearing was vanished. Whenever I go back to think about those books, I think of those sensations. But definitely finishing the book was probably one of the best. Have it in a couple of other book series, but that one was definitely one that was definitely very connected, that I still remember to this day. But that was more like just being in the sunshine and feeling the sun on my face and realizing, oh my god, I just finished Harry Potter. It was crazy. That was also the one book that I read in such quick succession. I think I read it in 2 days. And now I've read books a lot faster, but they were never as big as that, and that was a pretty big book. So the first one is my various sense memories for Harry Potter. Book series that I'm going to give a shout out to is the Hannah Swanson series by Joanne Fuqua, and this book takes place in a bakery. So whenever I would read the books, I would want to be in a bakery so badly, or I would imagine smelling cookies, because it's just whenever I open those books, I'm like, oh my god, I want to be in a bakery, or I want to have a, they talk about cookies and they talk about cakes, and I just I would get so hungry when reading those books. I would always need some sweets. So I don't read, there was I think it was my first year in college. I read them a lot, and I was very into the sweets at that point. I still like sweets, but when I read those, I definitely want sweets more because I'm talking about baking cookies and cakes and cupcakes and all the other fun stuff. But yeah, there's definitely a book series that when I read it, I'm like, I need the cupcakes. The next book is a book series that I just finished, and that's Rule from Novel, and it's by Elaine, hold on one second. By Elaine Goodett. But there is a very specific type of blood magic in this, and oh my god, whenever they would say about cutting themselves, I would be like, oh, I could see it so visually in my mind, the cutting of the hands and the breaking of the vials on the leg and the blood. It's a very, very good novel. It's a very, very good novel, but again, it's very intense, and I just remember whenever you see them breaking skin or cutting themselves to activate their magic. I just literally finished this 2 days ago. But I definitely remember, that sensation, too. So that was definitely one. This is a really, really recent read, but that's one that I just remember just, whenever they said that, in my mind's eye, I just remember, the cutting or how it would feel to, cut to activate your magic. But yeah, so that's been more of a recent read, but that was one that definitely popped into my head. The next series I'm going to chat about is the Warcross duology, Warcross and Wildcard, and I normally really sometimes struggle when there's really complicated worlds and when they describe it, because I don't always have the best visual picturing in my head. It's just not something that I normally do when I'm reading. But with this book, it was so easy for me to visualize the games that were occurring and the environments that they put us in. And I thought Mary Lou did such a good job of like explaining everything in such like an easy to understand way, but also like really like putting so much detail into it. And I like so loved it. I thought it was great. I know that Wild Card's not quite out yet, so I can't release my spoilers about that yet. But overall, I really, really love the world. I love the visual. It was visually stunning. And I really like, again, it was, you know, it was a very, very like atmospheric read, even though it really like, you know, there was no, like, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like I was watching a movie, but I kind of felt like it. I kind of felt like I was in like a video game and visually was seeing everything that was happening. So it was a very, very visually stunning book, even though there is no visual counterpart, but it was all through Mary Lou's amazing writing. And that's just incredible for you read, because she really does create a world that you just fall into. Another book that I had a very specific sense memory was the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And I remember I got this book as an audiobook, and I remember I was walking somewhere. I must have been walking to class or walking somewhere in the city. I think I was walking to like a bookshop because I had like a couple of hours. And I remember I just stopped dead in the middle of the street when I learned who the villain was in the book, and I was like, no, there's I missed key information. This cannot be right. And I remember the person's like, can you move? And I'm like, sorry, I just got to a really good part in my book, and I really like needed to know what happened. But that was that always makes me laugh because I literally stopped dead in the middle of the street. I was like, no, there's I missed key information. I have to go back and like rewind 20 minutes. Totally did not. It was just a really, really surprising thing, which you should definitely read that series. I have books behind her that I still need to read. But overall, that was just like a fun, like physical sensation. I'm like, oh my God, did they just really do that? They totally did. The next book series I'm going to chat about is the Illuminati Files series by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And the reason I'm going to talk about this series is like it's a very unique book series. I know a lot of people don't like the unusual format, but I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. And even before I listened to the audiobooks, because if you do listen to the audiobooks, like it becomes like a very like interactive experience, because it's not just someone reading you like the book, it's also like they have like a cool like background sound, but even like physically just reading the book, I think all that stuff is just so apparent. Like I was like I remember reading book 1, and I remember I read it during like a snowstorm, I think, or something. Like I couldn't go anywhere. It was like I remember it was on the edge of my seat and I had goosebumps all up and down my arms. That book is still so creepy to me. And I love this series, but I like have a hard time rereading book 1. I really do have to reread it eventually, and I hope we'll get to go back to the world. At least that's what Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff teased on Twitter. I have been watching you. But yeah, I just remember like the goosebumps on my arms like expanding, and I remember being like so creeped out by book 1. But definitely like in book 2 and book 3, like the outer soundtrack of it, I think, was very, 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 very appearable. Like I could almost hear like the computer keys clicking, or I could hear like the email being sent. You know, it was a very, very, even without the audiobook, I think the audio obviously helps that because those sounds are really included. But even if you don't, I think you could almost just imagine them being there, which I thought was super cool. To go into a different thing for a couple of the other ones, these are just books that like I remember reading at a certain time, and recently I've become like a very, very big like mood reader. So I've normally, before this summer, I have read a ridiculous amount of contemporaries in the summer. So whenever like I even like I even look at like contemporary books, I'm like, oh no, I'll read that in the summer, just because I can fly through them and there's not a lot of like plot development. Like it's just fun. And I haven't read a lot this summer, which is really, really kind of sad. So I really hope to in August to just pick a bunch of contemporaries and throw them on my shelves. But I normally read Morgan Matson in the summer whenever she has a book. And I've actually really want to, I love reading her over the summer. She's an author I love to read over the summer. Katie McGarry I love to read over the summer. So a lot of my contemporary authors I tend to read over the summer. In the fall, I love to read mysteries, so that's like very much. And in the winter, I love to read like high in-depth fantasy series. I broke out of my mold a little bit this year just because I kind of like had a lot of free time, but I'm hopeful that like I can read a few more contemporaries. I know I have definitely a few contemporaries planned next month, but I have been doing this challenge too, so it kind of threw me off this month just because a lot of the stuff I'm rolling hasn't been contemporary, to be honest. But I have a lot of contemporaries that I do want to read, and I might just kind of just pick them. But I do have a lot of comic books. Normally, I'm very, very a mood reader, and also Harry Potter. I always read Harry Potter during the summer. I always read the previous book before the new book came out. So like that would be every June when there was a new book, or July, I would always read the previous book, and that was like a big memory for me. So I try to be very consistent with that now. Like if I know I'm going into a new series, I'll re-listen to it, or I'll reread it sometimes if I just have the book and I don't want to get the audiobook. But I often try to like do that. And also like in very, very stressful times, like if I'm like really, really stressed out, I might just read like a book that like just something really, really quick. Like when I'm sick, I read a lot of contemporary too. And I did read a lot of contemporary this winter, so maybe that's why I'm kind of like just out. But those are overall just some of the books that clicked with me with this prompt. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you back here next week.